Welcome to the International Business and Law Academy. My name is TAURINE, and today we'll be looking at the Homes Market Sales Method of Nafta. Nafta is the North American Free Trade Agreement. We will be discussing more about the trades and goods of the North American countries, discussing about the trades in general principles, agriculture products, automotive goods, textile and apparel in the Free Trade Agreement of Canada, also the United States and Mexico. Firstly, I would like to talk about ratification. After the leaders, three nations signed the accord to the widespread in 2004, the Nafta throughout Mexico have left a little doubt that the Mexican would ratify it. Likewise, despite the much opposition to a free trade agreement among the Canadian population and the legislative approval also seems certain. Under Canada and the parliamentary system, the Prime Minister had firm control the ratification process. Ratification was the most questionable in the US, where the environment and the labor groups hoped to block a passage. It also examined the fast-track authorities that permit to the US executive branch to negotiate the treaties without fearing the special interest would fundamentally alter it during the congressional ratification process. There's also many environment concerns. Ruby, would you like to start?
Yes, so environmentalists expressed deep concerns that NAFTA would encourage US and Canada manufacturers to migrate to Mexico, where they would benefit from lax environmental protection. The environmental side of agreement established a tri-national commission that investigates allegations of a NAFTA's nation persistent failure to enforce the environmental laws. John, would you like to continue?
Yeah, so NAFTA addresses these complaints in two fundamental ways. First, the treaty requires that no member may lower its health, safety, or environmental standards for the purpose of attracting more investments. Second, the three nations negotiated that a side agreement that creates a process of enforcing each nation's nationals and subnationals environment standards.
The people of these three countries are also concerned about the job displacement. Anne, would you like to add anything?
Well, the US and Canada labor groups warned that NAFTA would result in a tremendous loss of jobs among unskilled workers. In response, the three nations also implemented a side agreement that created a tri-national commission on labor issues.
Ms. Nguyen, what do you think?
Like its environmental counterparts, these tri-national commissions coordinate disclose the relation among the members of labor issues and provide a fair trade sessions mechanism for punishing to governments that fail to enforce health and safety standards, child labor rules, and minimum wage.
Thank you. Let's discuss the merchandise trade now, and the trade in goods, and including the business general principle in the field of agriculture products, automotive goods, and textile and apparel. General principle: each participant agreed to accord the national treatment to a good imported from either the other two nations. The treaty is designed to secure the greater market access for each members state within the borders of the other two. This of the measure provides the elimination of tariffs and a reduction in the import and export restrictions. Now we would like to discuss about the agriculture products. Ruby, do you have any comment?
So for agriculture, they may have been the most politically sensitive area in the NAFTA negotiations because the parties were unable to reach a trilateral accord for reducing barriers to trade in agriculture products. Instead, they crafted two separate bilateral treaties, one between Canada and Mexico and the other one between the US and Mexico.
Yes, agriculture trade between the US and Canada is governed by the Canada-US Free Trade Agreement.
What about the field of automotive goods, Anne?
Well, NAFTA arrived at the automobile treaty that opened the growing Mexican market to US and Canada manufacturers over a 10-year transition period. The agreement committed US and Canada producers to increase production within Mexico.
Yes,
John?
so by making Mexican automotive production available to US and Canada investors. Automobile manufacturers are expected to build a large, efficient assembly plant that supplies the entire NAFTA region.
Um, Thank you. I would like to get deeply more into the opinion about the textile and apparel, don't you, Ruby?
So for textiles and apparel, I know there are the rules of origin and the safeguard provisions, but I'm going to touch on rules of origin first, which is for most products, a yarn forward rule requires that the textiles and apparel be produced in North American yarn. So for certain cotton or man-made fiber yarns, the treaty imposes a fiber forward rule that holds that clothing made of fibers not grown in North America will not receive duty-free status. And Anne, would you like to add for safeguard provisions?
Well, safeguard provision states that all custom duties on North American textiles and apparels will be eliminated within 10 years. However, during this transition period, NAFTA nations may increase tariffs on imports that meet NAFTA rules of origin in order to provide temporary relief to producers suffering serious injury as a result of increased imports.
Do you have any comment on safeguard provision?
NAFTA provides a special safeguard provisions that will be applied to certain products governed by the bilateral treaty during the first 10 years they are in effect.
John, would you like to add anything?
Yes, so the mechanism will be invoked when imports of these products reach a certain trigger levels established in the agreement.
Thank you all for the discussion in the trades in goods. For understanding the home market sales of the three North American countries, let's look at the case study, Red Raspberry from Canada. Facts: the US growers of the packager of Red Raspberry claim that Canadian exports were dumping poke packaged Red Raspberry in the Pacific Northwest. After comparing the exporter, the domestic price to the prices at which the raspberry was sold in the US, the International Trade Commission (ITA) determined that the Canadian import were being dumped. For two of the exporters, however, the dumping margins were so low that the no anti-dumping duty was accessed. In a later administrative review, the ITA changed the methodology from the whole market sales to the method to a constructed valuation method. This resulted in a finding to a substantially increased dumping export. Canada called by national panel reviewing the point out that the US Tariff Act stipulated the use of home market sales in case such as this. The ITA defended using the constructed valuation since the exporter home market sales were not large enough to provide a meaningful base for the price-to-price comparison. So the issue here is, should the binational review the panel instructed the ITA to recalculate the dumping margins under the home market sales method?
So I want to mention one problem. That is domestic support. The NAFTA nations recognize the importance of domestic price support to the agriculture sector and accordingly make no effort to eliminate them. However, they agree to reform their individual programs to minimize their trade distorting effects.
Likewise, the three members agreed to avoid the use of export subsidies except when they are designated to counter-subsidize imports from non-NAFTA countries.
I also think that the decision should be yes, because the ITA must recalculate the dumping margins by using home market sales in determining the fair value of the raspberries. This resulted in the ITA finding insignificant margins and thereby removing the anti-dumping duties. So the use of home market sale method to a constructed valuation method.
Well, I agree with Ruby. Deviations from the home market sales method is so low because of the low levels of home market sales. And this is not acceptable when that choice is not mandated by the statute.
Thank you all for the discussion. The question of this case is, should the binational review the panel instruct the ITA to recalculate the dumping margins under the home market sales method? The decision here is yes. This case consider when the ITA market may discard the sales of such a similar merchandise in the home market of the exporting country and instead of calculating the foreign market value on the base of constructed value. In reviewing the action of the ITA, the panels shall hold a unlawful and any determination found to be unexported by the substantial evidence or otherwise not in accordance with the U.S. law. While the differences must be given to an administrative agency, the interpretation of the statute agency discretion is not unfettered. Accordingly to the ITA's approach must be supported by clearly and have reasons. Thank you very much for your discussion on my presentation. Do you guys have any question? And once again, I would like to thank the International Business and Law Academy and Dr. Sun.